Today's episode of the Inside EVs podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tyre. E-Range EV tyres are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tyre with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's ERANGE tyres.com to find your EV's next set of tyres.
Hello, and welcome to the Inside EVs podcast for April the 14th, 2023. This is episode number 158. Thanks for joining us. On today's show, we'll be talking about the possible leak of the refreshed Tesla Model 3, the new Tesla Model Y variant now on sale, and Zeekr X is headed for Europe at a seemingly very reasonable price. And of course, much, much more. I'm Dominic Yoni, Inside EV's editor and forum moderator. Joining us today is the sedulous Mr. Tom Malogny, senior editor at Inside EVs and host of the YouTube channel State of Charge. We also have the megastar Mr. Martin Lee from the EV News Daily podcast, which is available on all the best podcast platforms. And of course, Kyle Connor joins us from the majestic, practically palatial halls of Out of Spec Studios, where he produces high voltage videos for a number of YouTube channels. Welcome, everybody.
Hello.
Morning.
Hey, guys.
Okay. All right. So let's kick this thing off with what we've been driving this week and get to some news.
Can we kick this off with sedulous, by the way? I love learning something new on the podcast. Involving or accomplished with careful perseverance, sedulous craftsmanship, diligent in application of pursuit, or a sedulous student. So there we go. It's a new word on me. And for any of our viewers or listeners, indeed, impressed by Dominic's vocabulary, which is most weeks because I don't read enough.
Well, my vocabulary is more down to the Google searches for positive attributes beginning with the letter M. But...
Okay, that'll do.
Or actually, in this case, it was S. Right. And yeah, I actually had that definition lined up as well, because just to remind myself. But anyway, so Tom, Mr. Sedulous, you got to the New York Auto Show last week, and you stopped by the Autel booth and spoke with their COO, John Thomas. Now we know they make home charging units because you've tested them, but at this show they had a whole range of products, including like an AC 12 kilowatt bidirectional charger, a 60 kilowatt 240 kilowatt maxi charger, DC fast chargers, a 40 kilowatt DC fast charger, and a mobile 30 kilowatt DC compact fast charger. So this last one was the focus of the post that you wrote for Inside EVs, and I believe that it's a very new product. So when they say that it's mobile, does that mean like you can toss it in the back of the car or something, or it looks to be a pretty significant size?
So yeah, it's actually, they were doing the product launch at New York Auto Show, and I was at the auto show on press days, media days, because I was moderating 2 different discussion panels on electric vehicle charging. So it was pretty cool. Unfortunately, I don't have those to share. But the Autel booth was right next to the stage where I was doing the moderation. So I walked over in the morning, and it was the first day of media days. They didn't even have the full booth set up, and their COO, John Thomas, was walking around, and I recognized him. So as soon as I walked up to him, he immediately recognized me from my reviews of their product. I don't know if you guys remember, I liked their product. It was a good charger, but there were a couple things I really didn't like about it. The cable was the worst cable I ever tested in cold weather testing. I made a lot of comments about that. The connector actually broke when I dropped it. That was more of a bad luck thing than anything. I think it just landed on that tab, and which I think a lot of connectors would break if I dropped them right on the edge and they landed on the tab. So, but any event, he really knew me because evidently my review caused a big stir in the company. And I mentioned here on the podcast that they reached out to me after the review and said, "Look, we're gonna take your comments and your criticism seriously," and they did. They immediately started a search for a new cable, and he told me here at the show, he goes, "Feel this cable here?" He said, "It's not out yet. It's going to be out soon in a month or so." But he goes, we We completely, based on your comments, went out and found a new cable that performs good in the cold weather. We're going to send you one as soon as we get it, and as soon as it's available, and we want you to test it if you can, which I said I will. I'll do an updated review. But the thing is, they had a charger in the corner with a cover over it. So I said, I really want to know about what's going on over there. And he said, well, it's a world premiere. We're going to premiere it in about 2 hours. It's a mobile 40 kilowatt DC fast charger. Well, some people will say that's not fast because it's 40 kilowatt. It's a DC charger, but it has yeah, there it is, the Maxi Charger DC Compact for those watching on YouTube. And it's on wheels and it plugs in. And there's, I think a lot of retail customers might look at this and say, oh, that's useless. It's low powered. I don't see the use case for that. But they're thinking about what they would use. And this isn't what a retail customer would use. This would work for business depots, bus depots, businesses that have lots of vehicles that come to the depot at night, need to be recharged for the morning. And the facility doesn't have the $500,000 to upgrade the infrastructure, come into their building and install all this charging infrastructure. They can have a unit like this without delivering really too much power, or a couple of these, and move them around. They come with 30-foot extension cords. Then the cables are another 16 feet. So you have over 40 feet of maneuverability, and you can have an attendant move them from vehicle to vehicle every couple of hours and get the whole fleet charged overnight and have it ready for the next day. So we have to start looking at all different ways to recharge vehicles. There's not one, one size fits all, that every depot people are going to pull in and there's going to be a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger lined up across the wall and they'll be able to charge them really quickly. We need to have all different types of charging equipment for business, more so than for customers like us driving our personal vehicles. So this fits right in there. So what he did was he did take the covers off of it and allow me to take video and talk to him about it. And with an embargo of a couple of hours. And I put this out the next day. And I said, listen, while I'm here, will you just walk around and look at all your equipment? I'm not going to really ask you a lot of questions about it because, quite honestly, I didn't have that much time. In like 40 minutes, I had to start my my moderation panel. But I said, just give us a quick overview of everything Autel has here. And that's what he did. We walked from charger to charger. He gave us a quick overview. I knew if I started asking him questions, I wasn't gonna have enough time and I was gonna run out. So I basically let him talk. For those people that want a little bit more of a deep dive on some of this equipment, Kyle made a really good video a couple of months ago when he was at a different auto show. It might have been Chicago or Detroit. I forget where it was. But Kyle went to the Autel booth, maybe CES, and he spent a lot of time opening the boxes, talking about the power levels and all that stuff. So I think the two videos together, if you're going to watch mine, watch his. If you're going to watch his, watch mine. And you'll get from Kyle's point of view, and then you get the point of view of the COO of the company. So I think it was informative, and it gave people a little idea of Autel is putting a lot of money behind this brand. They've been making automotive diagnostic products for a long time, for 20 years, all different types of electronics that diagnose problems in cars. But they just went into the EV charging space. It hasn't even been a year that they've been selling these products, and they're everywhere. I mean, the company is not necessarily the charger. Right. Look at CES, the booth that they had, Kyle. Look at the New York Auto Show. No other charging infrastructure company had a booth like this at the New York Auto Show. They're pouring tens of millions of dollars into getting their name out there, getting themselves established as a player, making all different types of AC and DC fast charging equipment. They're all in on charging. We're going to hear a lot about this company in the coming years.
Those big pedestals, those are DC fast chargers? They said they have like 300 of them in the ground here in North America already.
I was surprised to hear that. I didn't know that. Yes, they do. They have more than 300 in the ground. None around here that I know of. The one that we looked at with the big screen is a self-contained unit. It's got all the charging modules built into it. They also sell another one that requires an additional cabinet. But we took a good look. That one there has all of the DC the charging modules built into it, so you don't need an additional cabinet.
Awesome.
Oh, that's on Kyle's video. That's right. I thought it was mine.
No, this is from 3 months ago. Matt Speck.
Right. I didn't notice that switch either. That's
we open it up though. If you jump back to my video, John, I don't know if Kyle did in his, I forget, but John opens it up and you could see the power modules and the electronics and everything on the inside of it. But yeah, so I figured while I was there, take an opportunity and go through their products, and it worked out well. And I got a sneak peek at that that portable 40 kilowatt unit that he has. It could charge 2 vehicles at once. It'll split the power dynamically, 20-20, 30-10, whatever, however they have it set up.
Interesting.
Right on. So you also put out a couple YouTube shorts this week, showing off the Chevrolet Silverado EV and the Ram Rev pickup trucks. So you've talked about these trucks. We've talked about these trucks a bit already, but I wanted to hear what you thought about after seeing them in person. And also in your Ram Rev video, you mentioned an XR trim level that will offer class-shattering range. Is this version like with a range extender that didn't get talked about during the truck's digital debut?
Probably that's where John opened up the cabinet. I don't know if you want to show people, but we don't know a lot about the XR trim. Stellantis just kind of mentioned that. Well, first of all, the standard Rev is going to have a 168 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's supposed to be good for about 350 miles of range. That sounds reasonable. It's a little bit bigger than, say, my Lightning. My Lightning's battery pack, the gross capacity is 145 or 148, and it goes 320. So that lines up with reality. But then they're going to offer a 229 kilowatt hour battery pack that has up to 500 miles of range. But then they teased and said, look, this other XR trim is going to have class shattering range, but they left it at that. So, we know that they patented some type of a range extender that was going to be built into the back of the bed. We assume that that's what they're talking about. They didn't give any details about that because let's face it, 500 miles is pretty much class shattering as it is with their 229 kilowatt hour battery pack. How much bigger of a battery pack could they put in if it's not a range extender? What are you going to do with 300 kilowatt hour battery pack? Now you start really getting into the point of lugging around such a huge, heavy battery pack all of the time to use it in such small use cases. So infrequently would somebody need more than 500 miles of range. I mean, even towing, let's say it cuts range in half. It's 250 miles of range. Is it worth
200 even?
Yeah, even 200. I mean, that's not going to work for a segment of people that tow in middle America. Right. I don't care if you put a 500 kilowatt hour battery pack in it. It's still not going to work because in the winter, towing 12,000 pounds upgrade, we don't have the pull through chargers. They're not available yet. So there's still going to be a use case for diesel and gasoline pickup trucks, and that's going to last for a long time. No matter how good, no matter how long the bigger battery is and how good the range is, until we have ubiquitous pull-through high-speed DC fast chargers in middle America, where somebody needs to drive from Texas to Montana, and that happens a lot out there. I know we don't do that here in New Jersey, but that's the way of life out there, towing livestock and stuff back and forth across the country. That for a long time, gas and diesel is going to be needed. So, I don't know what Dodge is doing with this class shattering range. If it's not a range extender, it kind of doesn't make sense to me that they have a bigger than a 229 kilowatt hour battery pack.
Well, I did a little Googling on the XR trim, and I did notice they specifically say it's not a plug-in hybrid. So it's not like, it won't be like a traditional plug-in hybrid, but I think it might be more like the BMW 3 range extender sort of situation. But
yeah, maybe you could say that's a plug-in. Some people would say that that's a plug-in hybrid. I say it's a plug-in hybrid, even though it's an E-Rev or Rex. It's still a hybrid, and you still plug it in. So I'm not going to get in the weeds with saying one's an EREV, one's a BEV-X, one's whatever. A Dodge X. So I know it's not Dodge. I made that mistake. I don't know if you noticed.
Oops.
I published the YouTube short on the Rev. And in the YouTube short, I say the Dodge Ram. And as soon as I publish it, the first comment is like, dude, like, you don't know Dodge, like, this isn't a Dodge anymore. And I'm showing my age. So I quick went, took it down, edited Dodge out, and just said the Ram Rev. It's always going to be a Dodge for me. I'm sorry. I can't,
right.
You know, I've been calling them these Dodge Rams for 35 years now.
Right.
But, I think that was funny. And I was immediately called out on it. That was funny. But anyway, yeah, so that's the Ram Rev. It's going to have 335 horsepower. Each motor, front and rear motors, have 335 horsepower. Total is 654, and I think 620 or 620 pound-feet of torque. Dodge is saying 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. 350 kilowatt DC fast charging. It's on an 800 volt system, as is the Chevy Silverado. We talked about that really quickly when you introduced this, Dom. So I checked out the Silverado. The mid gate's really cool, how that opens up to allow long things for you to haul. The interesting thing about the Silverado to me is when you look at the Lightning and you look at the Ram Rev, they're just like normal pickup trucks. Most people would have no idea they're electric, but the Silverado it's got a little edge to it. You know, it's got that avalanche look to it, you know, and it just, looking at it, it looked more futuristic than the Lightning or the Ram Rev. You know, it kind of is distinctive. That was the one thing that stuck out to me, was that Chevy kind of, wanted it to look a little more edgy, a little more futuristic, whereas Dodge and Ford have taken the track of, now we're just going to make our pickup trucks be electric. And at least for now, Ford's next generation, the T3, I think is going to have an edge to it. But, you know, for now, they're kind of just normal vehicles. Yeah, there's the Silverado, and looked really good. That one thing that's interesting about the Silverado EV, when you want to compare it to the Lightning and the Ram Rev, the Lightning's frunk, which, you guys have heard me say this, so I'm, blue in the face. I love the frunk. 14.1 cubic feet of space. I use it all the time. The Dodge upped that a little bit. They went to 15 cubic feet of space. But the Silverado, if I'm correct, is 9 cubic feet of space. Okay. So significantly less. I don't know how I'm going to like that. I know the Hummer EV had a really small front too. I think it was 9 cubic feet. And I remember looking at how huge the front of the vehicle was when the front opens up. You're like, womp womp womp. Like, you expected this giant thing in there, and was very, it's disappointing. It just barely fits the infinity roof pieces of the Hummer EV. It was made where you could stack them and they fit perfectly, but that's it. You can't squeeze anything else in that, and like, I'm here in New Jersey. You guys know my background. I could barely get one body in the front of a Silverado. And
it's just not practical.
The Ram Rev, if I really use a hammer and a shovel, I could probably get 3 people in there if they're not too fat. So
it makes a difference. That makes a real difference to your buying decisions. So
we all have our needs, Martin.
On the Ram Rev, did they? Forgive me if I missed it. Did they rule out it being a series or serial hybrid? Because about earth-shattering range. Is there any chance they could do that?
Well, they just said it wasn't going to be a plug-in hybrid.
That's what I mean. So Nissan are currently going heavy here with their e-power technology. It's been big in Japan for many, many years now. I think with the advertising phrase, it's not quite self-charging hybrid, but it's drive electric powered by petrol, or words that something like that. Drive electric with petrol power, or it's a combination of those. And I'm like, because it's not a plug-in, it's simply a series or serial hybrid. So yeah, the engine's a generator. It's fine. You get loads of range out of it because you're burning stuff. And yet they build them as EVs. They're electric vehicles. You can drive electric. It's powered by petrol. Which, don't get me, I've got too many gray hairs on my beard with Toyota. I'm not going to start worrying about Nissan. They're just idiots. But an e-power is interesting technology. Just don't sell me it as an electric vehicle. Just sell me it as a petrol car that's got electric motors. That's cool. I like that. That's interesting.
Is there a more idiotic car company than Nissan, though?
I don't know.
I don't think maybe there is.
I don't know if I think they've suffered a
man.
lot of issues over the last 5 years, and
Well, they're not helping themselves with this.
They're not recovering well,
I don't know. It's just don't try and flog me an e-power car and tell me it's an electric car. I'm not a sucker. I'm not a mug. Just be honest with me. Anyway. So is there any chance this Ram Rev could be that technology? Because you do get tons of range out of a tank full of petrol. There's no denying that. And you put a couple of electric motors in there, and you can sell it. You can flog it as an EV.
I mean, that's basically what the i3 was, wasn't it, Tommy? Wouldn't you say?
i3 you would plug in.
No, i3 was always plug in.
Right.
So,
but
with the range, so Nissan e-Power doesn't have a plug socket. So I think unless I can plug it in, you can't sell me an EV.
I can't imagine that, Martin, because it's just going to be a variant of the main Ram Rev,
right?
I can't imagine that it would be.
It'd be easier for them to just do a regular hybrid,
Yeah, they're going to brand it a range extender. They're going to have a little engine somewhere, maybe in the front or the back, and it's going to be a plug-in. But they're not going to call it a plug-in hybrid. They're going to call it an extended range Ram
XR,
not a PHEV.
Right. Okay. All right. So
I'll correct myself so that Nissan is very happy and don't want me. Fueled by petrol, driven by electric. That's their e-power technology. Okay. You recharge on the go, which is amazing, and you still get regen. But fueled by petrol, driven by electric. Is there anything else that can depress me more? Trying to sell me an electric vehicle that's not an electric vehicle, but there we go. So
Martin, have you read my Prius Prime article, first drive review? So at the bottom of the first drive review, Inside EVs and as well as Motor One started now. When we do our first drive articles, we have to include like 3 common questions or 4 common questions that people may have about the vehicle.
Okay.
So this was the first.
This is great.
Yeah. So I'm like thinking, okay, what questions will people have? And I even forget what I wrote, but I remember the one that I had, and I was surprised. I almost thought that it might get like edited out, Seth or somebody might say, Tom, we don't want Toyota to be mad at us or whatever. But if you could pull that up, the last question I wrote was, is the 2023 Prius Prime a self-charging hybrid? So that's what I wrote.
Oh man, I'd missed that. That would have made my day seeing that. No, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid. Doesn't exist.
It's more of a marketing term than a reality. Yeah,
it's wordplay.
That was
it's
hat tip to you.
I love it.
All right.
Okay.
So Tom. So tomorrow you have another big video coming out. I think that's people are going to really want to watch. But I think we might be a little spoiler alert coming up here. So let's see what we got here. I understand.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it, Tom. I think people are going to watch my videos, even if I tell the podcast people what happened. Sure. So now, as I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago on the podcast, I decided that I'm going to sell my R1T. I'm keeping the Lightning, and I actually ordered a Rivian R1S more than a year ago, and that's finally coming in. So now's the time for me to make a decision. I have a good friend of mine that's going to buy my R1T. So now he wants to take it this weekend, today or tomorrow. So I'm like, okay, while I still have it, what haven't I done yet that I need to do? Because, I didn't have, you push things off until you have to. Everybody knows that. So I'm like, I never did a side-by-side range test, Lightning versus R1T, where I get both of them, hop in the car and just drive. So I decided to do that. I called Pete up, who Pete's actually in the comment section here today. And Pete's always up for doing a video with me. So I said, all right, let's get in these vehicles. I'll charge them to 100%. We'll get on Route 80 and we'll head west. And I'm not going to do a standard 70-mile-an-hour range test where we stick to 70. This is truck versus truck. If we slow down, if we speed up, we'll be doing it the same way. If we hit traffic, I don't have to stress about it. So I was able to charge at home. I didn't have to go to a DC fast charger and charge on the road. There's Pete. And then jump right out on the highway. So we did it. Temperatures were between 60. We started, it was in the high 50s, but then it got into the low 70s, like 71, 72. So pretty good range weather, not perfect. And to preface this, if you remember, I did my winter range tests with the Lightning and the R1T, but on different days where I drove them to Vermont, 210 miles. The Lightning arrived with a 3% state of charge. The Rivian arrived with 8% state of charge. So it beat the Lightning by 5% state of charge. So I was pretty confident the Rivian was gonna win again. I figured by about 5 to 10% state of charge. The Rivian crushed it. We finished. I drove 255.7 miles, and when I got home, what I did was I drove to the Lightning was at 50% and then turned around, headed home. When we pulled into my driveway, the Lightning was at 1%, and it was saying there's 3 miles of range remaining. Wow. The Rivian was at 15%, and it was saying 49 miles of range remaining. So basically 260 miles from the Lightning, 305 miles for the R1T, somewhere around there. So I started thinking about this, and what it really comes down to is the Rivian, when you can put it in conserve mode and lower the suspension down, it makes a big difference. Now you'd say, okay, well, why did it do better now than it did in the cold weather? Well, it did better in the Lightning did better in the cold weather because I was able to precondition it, set the battery to precondition and have the battery nice and toasty warm at 100% when we left. And it was only 17 degrees when I did these tests over the winter. So that's why the Lightning was able to close that gap in the winter. But now when you really didn't need the preconditioning, the Rivian is more efficient. It's got the aerodynamics are better on the Rivian. It's got the tonneau cover in the back that adds. I was able to drop it all the way down to the lowest setting. All those things added little bit here, bits and pieces where it added up to really beating the Lightning by a wide margin. And I had the all-terrain KO2s on the Lightning. They're a little bit more aggressive than the all-terrain Scorpions, Pirelli Scorpions that Rivian uses, but it's still much closer than if I would have used the all-season tires on the Lightning versus the all-terrain tires on the Rivian. You had to have all-terrain tires on both. So that's what we ended up with. The Lightning finished up with 2.0 mile per kilowatt hour, and the Rivian ended up with 2.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So it was significantly better, better aero. It has the conserve mode. Lightning doesn't. The Lightning doesn't have any eco mode. It's just normal driving. And then there's sport driving. So, there's no eco mode available on the Lightning.
Right on.
So, yeah, beat it by a decent amount. So that's pretty much it. And my buddy's going to come today or tomorrow and pick it up. And Ford's actually dropping off a Mustang Mach-E GT Performance here with the BlueCruise 1.2. So I'm going to be doing that this week. Some Blue Cruising and also probably some charge recordings, because I know Ford has massaged the charging characteristics on the Mach-E a little bit since the last time I had one and did a charge recording. So we'll do that, and maybe even throw in a 70 mile an hour highway range test. I haven't done that with a GT. So that's probably what's on the agenda for this week, and we could probably talk about next week. But the range test went pretty well. I was a little surprised, but then once it was done and I started thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's why. There's the preconditioning is really what closed the gap in the winter.
So 300 miles. So what was the approximate speeds that you're doing?
So we would jump between mostly 75. But there were times when traffic slowed. We had to slow down to 70, and there were times we went up to about 80. Just when it was wide open, and I just tacked it up a little bit. So there wasn't a constant speed, and we do that with the 70 mile an hour highway range. And since this was side by side, I didn't feel the need to lock it in and just do that, because people don't drive that way. So, I figured even the first 12 miles going and the last 12 miles coming home were not on the highway. That was on secondary and tertiary roads. So about 90% of this was dead on the highway, at least 70 miles an hour. And then the rest was 30, 40 miles an hour, something like that. So I think this gave a better real world comparison. And now what I'm going to do is I'm also going to, I'm swapping out the tires on the Lightning. I'm going to put back the all season tires, and I'm going to repeat the same drive within a week or so. And I'm going to really monitor. Because it wasn't a steady miles per hour, I monitored how far I had driven at the 25%, the 50%, the 75%. So I'm going to make sure the time-wise that the whole trip takes me the same amount of time, and that way I'll know my speed's about the same. And we'll see if the all-terrain tires go further than all-season tires go further than the vehicle did when it was equipped with the all-terrain tires. So we'll do a little comparison with that too.
That's awesome. That'd be great. Just thinking those are great numbers for above 70 miles an hour. A lot of that, those are over 300 miles is a really great result.
Hey, I'm happy with 260 for the Lightning, to be honest with you. That's at highway speeds, a big vehicle like that,
Yeah, it's got more frontal area than the Rivian too, right? So it's going to take a bigger hit, especially at higher speeds.
A lot. Right. That the high speed. Oh, I got to add one last thing, guys, and I talk about this at the end of the video. One of the reasons why I wasn't sure how much the Rivian was going to outperform them is I've driven the Lightning now almost 10,000 miles. I think I have 9,700 miles on it. The Rivian, 8,000 miles. Each one, I'm averaging 1,000 miles a month, almost exactly. The Rivian and the Lightning's overall consumption, I don't reset. I keep the B trip meter always when my vehicles are new, so I know my overall consumption over the life of the vehicle. The Lightning's is 2.0 miles per kilowatt hour. The Rivian's is 1.97. So basically, it's the same. So, but the thing is, I leave the Rivian in all-purpose driving mode almost all the time. I never use conserve mode. I have those 4 motors. I want to use them all. It's fun to drive. I only drop it into the conserve mode when I'm actually doing like tests for videos, because that's really, to be the most fair about range, you should put it in the most efficient driving mode. So the interesting thing is over 10,000 miles and 8,000 miles, the vehicles in my driving, and it's the same driving. I don't do any type of different driving with the different vehicles. The efficiency is exactly the same. So it's weird that really shows me when I do these range tests, the only difference is dropping it in conserve mode and lowering the suspension. That makes the difference, because otherwise, just driving in all-purpose mode on the Rivian, it has the same efficiency as the Lightning.
Right. Right on.
Okay. You mentioned your Mach-E is arriving. Just a really in the driveway. Just a really quick mention for Ford, who have just got today approval from the British government to use BlueCruise on our motorway system, which is good news for Ford after about 100,000 test miles, something like that, and no incidents, and just to prove that the technology works. Of course, you've got BlueCruise, but any Mach-E listeners or viewers in the UK for £18 a month subscription can get the full suite of features. So hands off, eyes on is how they bill it. Of course, it's not like the Mercedes system that's hands off, eyes off, up to 30 miles an hour or so. This is up to, well, our speed limit is, I think the system works up to 80 miles an hour, but our speed limit is 70. So there's 10 miles an hour there where you can say, sorry, officer, the car was doing it. But yeah, so great that they've engaged with the Department for Transport here and the government, and have now got the, I'll say green light, the blue light, pardon the pun, to go ahead and roll that out. And I think it's a great example of them working with regulators, working with all the different people that you need to work with to prove that this technology is level 2. It's level 2 driver assist, of course, is safe, and you're ultimately in control. But it's a little more advanced than just smart cruise control, isn't it? So it positions the car differently on bends. It'll take a wider berth around trucks and things like that. So it drives a little bit more like a human. So yeah, great news there. Congratulations to Ford. And I know that Tesla drivers are still spewing that the system is hobbled over here, but it makes you wonder, well, hang on, they've had all these years to engage with the regulators. Like, why don't Tesla get all the, the freedoms they get in the US? I can't explain that. So, I mean, obviously we're outside of the European Union now, so you can do that, I guess, with the British government, which will be a different process than engaging with the EU, which I know Elon Musk has complained about. They meet twice a year to talk about these things, right, which could be why. So maybe Tesla are going to be, next here, and we get to unlock all the features that you get, and we'll get FSD beta, city streets, maybe.
Cool.
Okay.
One last thing to follow up. We have a comment from Happy Hippo. Asking me, why am I driving down to 1%?
Yeah,
That's
I saw that.
Not good. So the thing about driving your vehicle down to a low state of charge, it's not great if you do it all of the time. But if you do it every now and then and you plug in immediately when you're finished driving, it's not bad for the EV. We have to stop really totally stressing about overcharging and undercharging your batteries. It's best practice to not always have the vehicle at a low state of charge or a very high state of charge, or charge it to 100%. If it's not LFP battery, the LFPs are fine. But if every now and then you drive your electric vehicle way down to even down to zero, if you immediately plug it in when you're done driving, you're totally fine. It's not good to let it sit at a low state of charge for a long period of time. That's bad for the battery. Or to let it sit at 100%. But if you're going on a road trip, you can charge your EV to 100%. What I'll do is when I'm going on a really long distance, I set it to charge to 85% the night before, and I get up in the morning and plug it back in and set it to 100%. So I time it so that it's at 100% pretty much, within an hour of me leaving on my trip. Sometimes it's within a couple minutes, and then it's totally fine. You're not going to damage your battery if you top it off to 100% every now and then, or you drive it down to zero every now and then. Don't overstress about the battery. It's going to be just fine. You don't want to do it all the time, but every now and then, it's not a problem.
Right on. So, Kyle, you are a Nissan Leaf owner, and you just had Nissan's second electric vehicle ever, the Ariya, on loan from them, which gave you a chance to put them side by side and talk about how their product has progressed in the 13 years since the first Leaf left the production line. So, what are some of the standout improvements?
Well, actually, didn't they have the ENV 200 and some other little electric?
Oh, yes, true.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They had the van, but not. They have it here. I can't remember. I remember it was in Europe.
In the U.S. market, this is second.
And that had battery preconditioning as well, though, but they left it off the Leaf. So they had the technology, but anyway.
Right. And they had I remember watching some Bjorn videos in Norway with the V2G stuff with the ENV.
Yeah.
It's super cool. I really wish Nissan or someone had more of a need or use for V2G, because right now it's something we talk about a lot, and it's been available for a long time. No one just seems to care. So, I'm not sure V2G or V2X is that important. Anyway, you guys can watch the video. This was really a dumb one that I did. It was just a filler thing. I didn't even think I was ever going to post it, but we couldn't get a video edited in time. So I just threw this one up. And it's basically, what the hell has Nissan been doing the last 13 years? And the summary is it doesn't seem like much. The Ariya is not a bad vehicle. Overall, I spent a lot of time with it. We've talked about it on this show. It's just priced wrong. And some of the key important features that EV drivers really like, for example, setting a charge limit or one pedal driving, are just not available at all. And so, I think they really messed up some key components on the Ariya, things that they had right in the Leaf and that people liked. And not totally sure what happened there. So, I would say Ariya is not a class-leading vehicle, but it is priced as a class-leading vehicle, and that's the unfortunate part.
Well, let's talk about the Ariya just a little bit more then. So you did a 0 to 100% fast charge of the 87 kilowatt-hour version of it. So it has a peak of 130 kilowatts, which is kind of low. So how did it do?
Yeah, very low, and way too low, by the way. This is 2023. We're talking this car's main competitors are doing twice the charging speed. So really, unfortunately low. However, that's not all to say it's all bad. There's some things we talk about here, which is the curve and the area under the curve. And what's pretty crazy about this video, about this test, and everyone's known this because there's been tests in Europe. So again, another one I didn't think I was going to post, but needed to get one up. So it just kind of sat flat and then, trailed off towards the end. So basically it holds peak speeds from 6% to 48%. And then it's a nice gradual descent and really fat around 70, 80, 90% state of charge. It's still doing, I think, right around 50 kilowatts at 94%. So really, really juicy curve. And what's impressive is it doesn't have the peak of the Tesla. It charges fatter in the mid-range. And the 0 to 100% time, or in this case, 0 to 99, is identical to a Tesla. Pretty much every Tesla is an hour, 0 to full, no matter which way you do it. And this was right on par. It was an hour to 99%. So You know, they what this is really good for are folks who don't have home charging and need to do deep charges maybe once or twice a week. They can jam a lot of electricity in that time period. Whereas if you're going to be road tripping, doing it out of spec style, arriving low, not a good road tripping vehicle. Your stops are going to be incredibly long compared to the jamming 250 kilowatts into it for a short period of time of the Tesla. But if you don't go on many road trips, or, you know, and I don't recommend it because it also limits your DC fast charging rate over multiple DC sessions in a period of time in this car, which is ridiculous. And I'd talk about all that in this video if you're curious. But I don't think that many people listening to the show are shopping Ariya, so we probably shouldn't spend too much time on this car.
So I just got a text message from Ford. We'll be at your house in about 45 minutes. So we might, I might be able to swing the camera around and check out the Mach-E before the podcast is over.
Wow, cool. Oh, Dom, you're muted.
And
I
Kyle, I'm glad you brought up the point that you know, it would be good for somebody that needs to once a week or twice a week do a full charge. Maybe they can't charge at home because I think and I'm as guilty as this as anybody, you know, overemphasize the need for jamming a lot of power into the vehicle in a short period of time, which is great for road trips. Don't get me wrong. But, you know, and Kyle and I talked about this, you know, on the phone after he did this recording, when he told me, you know, when you really look at it, you know, it doesn't peak out. You don't get a good burst, a good 10 minutes or 15 minutes of a charge for a road trip. But the overall curve and how much power it puts in that 1 hour, it's not bad. You know, so of course Nissan could have done better with this. But I'm not going to kill them and say this is a horrible charging EV, because it's not. It could have been better. But the fact that you know, the charging curve and the space under that area under the curve remains fat for a long period of time, it's not bad. You know, and coming from Leaf, it's downright fantastic. So
yeah, absolutely.
You know,
it takes that jump and then it goes down. Yeah.
Oh, we lost Tom. You're on mute for some reason.
And that's still really fast.
Oh, sorry.
90%, 95% is pulling 50 kilowatts. That's fantastic.
Exactly. That really it doesn't make up for the fact that it doesn't charge at a higher rate, but it helps to ease the pain of that. Sorry, Martin, I cut you off.
No, it's just that's really good deep into the pack. That's e-tron levels of impressive up in the pack, right up there. So I've never actually looked at what the top buffer is on an Ariya. But it'd be good to know
it's 87 kilowatt hour gross, 91 or 92.
So
the other way around. It's 87 usable, 91, 92 gross. So there's a few kilowatt hours. But the thing is, the cars will always be 100% charged.
Yeah.
Because there's no way to set a charge limit lower.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
But, so if you wanted to charge like the 80%, like on a road trip, like what's the general area for that, like time-wise? Half an hour, 30 minutes, 35 minutes?
It just depends on what you plug into. I don't think people are going to be plugging into zero. My recommendation was plug in at 5 or 6% because that's the most amount of time that you're going to get at the maximum speed. And from there, you're looking at over 30 minutes still, maybe 32, 33 minutes. But that's still, you compare that to Ioniq 5, which is cheaper. Is 18 minutes. And by the way, that still charges really well up top. So I'm not here to give Nissan any crazy praises for saying they fixed charging curves. Like you can buy an eGMP car and it will smoke this thing. And that's well under an hour, 0 to full. So, you know, they're just blew everyone out of the water. Nissan was years late to this product. If it came out 5 years ago, we'd be excited about this. But unfortunately, they're launching a product that was designed for a different time, and they priced it very poorly for our market.
It's interesting, Kyle, that they when they introduced the Leaf, it was ahead of its time. You know, it was like they were the first automaker, other than say Tesla, the first legacy brand that said, you know, we're going to put a fully electric vehicle out on the road, and you know, and now they came out with their second one, and it's like the industry's blown by them. And you talk about, you know, eGMP and the characteristics, the charging characteristics, so much better. And you're 100% right. I'm not trying to give Nissan credit here. You know, I'm just saying that it in my opinion, at least when I look at this, it's bad. It should be better, but I might not be looking at it and saying it's as bad as I think you view it. I'm looking at it and saying 0 to 100%, it averages 90 kilowatt of power intake from 0 to 100%. Very few electric vehicles average 90 kilowatt from 0 to 100. But your argument, and our Goodwin's going to say, yeah, but very few people charge from 0 to 100%.
Ideally, you would charge at home and then use fast charging for road trips. That's right. What you should do with an electric car.
If you can charge at home.
If you can't charge at home and you can't charge at work, why are you driving an electric car? Some people just like to waste their time, I guess. I mean, I'm not here to argue against EVs, but that it's as a person who's done that, it's really a pain in the ass to not have home charging, to the point where I would not consider an electric vehicle unless you have a daily way to charge it.
Right.
It's challenging. No doubt.
Especially if you do any number of miles. Like a lot of people only put 10,000 fewer miles on their cars a year, and they can probably get by with a 110 outlet at their house, or going down to the Walmart parking lot and charging there once a week.
A 110 outlet can get you, through. I know actually, Michaela, Alyssa's sister, who owns that ID4, only has a 110 outlet. Just drives around town and uses fast chargers when she goes on the occasional ski trip. But she's like, oh, I've never even been to our local station to charge. She's only uses EA stations when she's out, so it works well for her.
Yeah. Yeah, I know people that live in condos that aren't allowed to install charging equipment. They're actually not even allowed to charge their EV at home, but they back their EV in the garage door gets closed, nobody knows what's going on, but they can install a level 2 charger or an outlet, or the condo association would know something's up. So they charge from the regular 120 volt outlet in their garage. Now, if there was ever a problem, they would be in trouble because they're doing what they're not supposed to, but they live on that just fine. And particularly with today's world, a lot of people work from home. So your car's home all day. You could be charging 21 of the 24 hours of the day, and so if you do that and then you use the DC fast chargers when you're doing road trips, you could live with an EV on 110. I don't know if it was my Lightning, if I could live on 110. I think I might lose range as it's plugged in on 110. But I actually did, if you guys remember, for 2 months when the garage was getting redone, I didn't have it. So it was bad. I mean, and I had 2 EVs to charge, the Rivian and the Lightning, and I was just driving whichever one had more charge. So you don't want to do a 140 kilowatt hour battery pack that averages under 2 miles per kilowatt hour. You don't want to charge that on 120. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Greg Pochet says, my 23-year-old daughter wants an EV, but won't know if she can charge at home and work, so EV is off the table. I mean, yeah, that's the way it is sometimes. But if you do have access to a Tesla supercharger and just the 80%, depending on how many miles you put a week, a trip
but
to
then
the
it gets
supercharger once a week.
Think about how much
there's
no
it's
cost
still cheaper than
at
gas.
that point. No, not really. Not if you have an efficient gas car. I should do
if
that.
You have an efficient gas, but like the same size vehicle.
But if you compare a new Prius to a new Model 3, they're very similar in their capabilities of size, and some people don't care about performance. Let's just knock that off the table. You charge a Tesla at a supercharger exclusively, and you fill a Prius with regular fuel. It's going to be cheaper to drive the Prius.
Probably would be, yeah. I agree, especially now at Tesla raising prices.
Well, you take a Corolla, take a Civic, take any normal gas car. It's going to be cheaper than driving an electric car and relying on fast chargers. And one thing is proven, fast charging is only getting more expensive. Where fuel costs do fluctuate, you have to eat it when it's high, but occasionally it's low as well. And, fast charging costs, especially on the West Coast, are no joke. I mean, it could be $60, $70 to charge a Model S or even a Model 3 at some superchargers during peak times in California. It might cost you $40 to fill up that Prius, and you're going to go a lot farther.
If you remember, I put out a video about 2 months ago with the Lightning, comparing it to gas F-150s. And I did every different way of charging at home versus EVgo versus Electrify America, the pricing on the different networks. And it was kind of a push with if you charged exclusively on public charging. And that was before Electrify America had their price increase that they recently had. So it's what Kyle's saying bears merit. There wouldn't be much of a financial savings if you're driving an efficient gas car. Now, of course, if you get one that, isn't very efficient, you're comparing it, it won't, you'd still be a little bit ahead with the cost of electric. And on this subject, before we move off, I'm going to probably be giving somebody some pointers and tutors soon, because Meredith just this week found out her cousin that lives in Washington, D.C., her first cousin, just bought on a whim a Volvo C40.
Oh, nice.
And
nice
she
car.
cannot charge at home. She lives in a big apartment, and she's down in the DC area. So I know I'm going to be getting a call at some point soon, like helping to figure out how to keep her charged. But in her defense, not really her defense, but to explain it, she doesn't drive a lot. She I think she walks to work, or she works very close to her home. And, she needs the vehicle when she goes distances where you'd need to use public infrastructure anyway when you drive distances. So we'll see how that works out. But, she has just bought a C40, and if I can help her out figuring out the charging, I will.
And I just want to comment, I seem to have pissed off our audience by saying don't buy an electric car. My point still stands. We are nerds, okay? My home charging exploded again. I'm relying on public charging. I also have charging at the office, but I'm relying on public charging. And, because I'm spreading my mileage across all the cars and doing testing, it's actually okay. It's doable. I'm not saying it's not doable, but I'm saying the average person isn't considering the tiny impact they're making to the environment as a whole as their purchasing decision here. You need to look at how the car fits into your life. Okay. And if it doesn't fit into your life smoothly, and you're going to spend an extra 1, 2, 3 hours a week away from your house charging a car, that's no life to live. At that point, buy a plug-in hybrid, regular hybrid, or something else. But sorry about that, but that's unfortunately the truth for like 99% of people. You're all nerds, including me, so we're okay with going somewhere to charge.
All right. So Nissan, we did the Nissan fast charge. So Kyle, moving along here, you've developed something you're calling the 10% challenge. And you've put both the Tesla Model Y and a Porsche Taycan to the test. So tell us what this challenge entails and how these two cars fared.
Yeah, we'll be really quick because people can just go and watch the video if they're interested. Yeah. This is my new favorite test that we do. And it's all about the combination of charging speed and vehicle efficiency / range. The whole thing comes down to when we do full charging tests, 0 to 100%. That's not a real world use case. That's a way for me to benchmark cars with Tom, with others in the industry, to look to see how they're charging. When we go from 100 to 0 at 70, first of all, no one drives 70. Everyone's going faster. And it's just another way for us to benchmark cars, not in a real world situation, but just, again, we just started with that speed. It's easy to replicate everywhere. And all we wanted to do was put cars in a similar condition, barring some temperature differences that we note always, and, drain them from 100 to 0. So the thing is, what we don't do is to show the road trip range. And I was trying to think, how do we do this? Bjorn has the 1,000-kilometer challenge, which is really great, but also a little bit more variable with traffic and different speeds and things. But I love that challenge. It's really great. I'm a huge fan. And I'm like, how do we do this as something we can add when we have a car for a week? That's not going to take us, a day to do it. That can just take a few hours to show the road trip range. And randomly, I was just thinking, why don't we do a 10% challenge? And really, I don't know that some people don't like the name. Some people do. I don't know. We're calling it this, but it's really the 10-minute or 10% 15-minute challenge. You got to put both together for it to make sense, because what we do is we arrive to a charger that can max out the car. We're not here to review charging infrastructure. We're here to review the car in ideal situations. So we find a charger that can max out that vehicle. We then plug in a fully preconditioned version of that vehicle, ready to accept all the power. And we charge from 10% for exactly 15 minutes. Now, there's some BMS sway. There's some things. I mean, I don't really like, it's not super scientific. That's why I like our range tests, because we drive until the car stops. So we don't rely on BMS data, but we're like within 0.5%, like we're close. So it's what you would do on a road trip. You pull up to a charger at 10%, you charge for 15 minutes. That's about as long as I like to sit at chargers. Some people may want to sit longer. Some people may want to sit shorter. And then, you can adjust as needed, but we just needed one charging time to benchmark the cars, and then we drive at 80 miles an hour. And the reason I do 80 is because everyone drives 85 out here, and some people drive 75 on the East Coast. And, I just think it's a much more realistic road tripping speed. No one is doing 70. If you are doing 70, watch our range test. We have 70 mile an hour numbers for you. If you're doing 55, well, you're just one of those nerds who hates me talking about hybrids. So, that's just how that goes. So I think it's a really good test. I think it's a really interesting test. And ultimately, we're going to run every car we can through it. I think it's a great way to ignore the stated range numbers and the peak charging speeds. And it shows a bit of the curve, and it's all about the road trip. So I'm very pleased here.
So you drive it down to basically zero, or just about?
Nope. We go back down to 10%. So I precondition to the charger. Basically what I do is I go halfway out roughly, and then I turn around and I precondition to the charger that we started at, because that's what you would do on a road trip. You always have the next charger selected. You want the fastest speeds. And we plug. Well, what am I trying to say? We start the test as soon as it dips from 11 to 10%. That's when I plug in, and we calculate the range number, hopefully as close to the charger as possible. When it dips from 11 to 10, we see how many miles we went.
Okay. And so how many miles did the Tesla Model Y do?
It did 98, which is pretty good. So 15 minutes of charging got you 98 miles at 80 miles an hour, which I thought was very reasonable.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is actually at 80 miles an hour. But the Taycan, I get the feeling it did better than that.
Yeah, and no surprise to anyone except maybe how well it did. I thought if it could do 112, 115, 120, that'd be amazing. Ended up doing 140. And that is just the benefit of a Taycan. And the benefit of this test shows even with an EPA range of 80 to 100 miles lower in certain trims, this car went significantly farther on that initial charge because it just rips. I mean, I left the charging station at nearly 80% state of charge after 15 minutes. So, yeah, pretty cool.
That's great. Oh, that's true, right? What happens when cars can fill up completely in less than 15 minutes?
Yeah.
There's a problem. I see a problem with your test, Kyle. You're going to have to rearrange things.
No, I think 15 minutes is reasonable. I don't think we'll see anything that can 115 minutes soon.
Kyle, I didn't watch your Taycan video yet. I watched the Tesla. Do you remember how many kilowatt hour the Taycan took in that 15 minutes?
Yeah, it was somewhere around 55, something like that.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking is I did months ago that same. Well, not the same test, but I charging a Lucid Air. I started at 10%, and I charged it a little bit longer. I charged it for about 20 minutes, but I went back and looked at my notes because I wanted to see how many kilowatt hour it added, starting at 10% in 15 minutes, and it added 59 kilowatt hours.
So they're very close.
Very close. Very close.
Yeah. Well, this is what I've been saying. I've been running some calculations to see, what's the ultimate cannonball car, right? Because we've already done Taycan, and I'm not saying we're going to do another one, but it's just like that's an interesting idea. Is it the 3 or 4 year old Porsche that says it can go, that charges really well? By the way, every time I talk about this, someone from Lucid texts me yelling at me saying that you're not whatever. I'm like, well, look, we're going to run the cars side by side. I'll have the Lucid Air out here in about a week's time here in Colorado. And we're going to run both in the 15-minute challenge next to each other. And so it's going to be pretty cool. I actually need to find a Taycan on arrows because I'll have the arrows on my dad's Air for that. So we're going to give it every chance we can. But the thing is, you also did a Dream Edition, right, Tom?
Yeah. For the charging, yes, it was a Dream Edition. It was on the old software. It's been changed. The charging curves modified.
I mean, it's gotten the Grand Touring doesn't charge as well as the Dream, marginally. Very small differences. But I think it's probably best to ignore the Dream because no one can buy that one anymore.
Yeah.
We focus on Grand Touring. What I really want to do is I need to benchmark the most efficient Model S, the most efficient like i7 or EQS for the German stuff, and then Lucid Air and Taycan. Those are going to be the big ones. And then the new Ioniq 6 should do really well in this test. I'm going to run my Nissan Leaf because I think it's funny. The Rivian will be actually interesting with the Lightning doing the truck stuff in this because Rivian just seemed to have fixed their DC fast charging curve just in the new update. They didn't make any notes, but everyone's saying it's better. So I've been draining the truck to try that out today. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity here. I think Lucid probably will be the king of this challenge, especially on the Aero wheels. It's just the efficiency at speed and the ability for it to take on energy is pretty cool. But let's just commend the Taycan for such a small battery pack and having the biggest wheels on this particular one to go like almost 50% farther than the Tesla Model Y did, which Model Y and Model 3 are very close. They're only like a 9-mile EPA difference between the two when you go spec for spec. So that's really, really impressive. Porsche just nailed. That's why I love the Taycan. Your charging stops are 10 minutes. That's all you need.
And unfortunately, Kyle, I think, at least from what I get, the impression from many people is that the Taycan doesn't go far because of its EPA range rating. Not that it doesn't go far, but that people are disappointed in the Taycan range because the EPA range rating is so much lower than what reality is. And it's so strange because there's no other vehicle that we found that just consistently outperforms its EPA range rating by like a third. Like we have vehicles that outperform it by 5% or whatever, but 30%, 33%. You look at some of our range tests. You and I both did the rear wheel drive version at right around 300 miles. 297. I did 304 on the new software, or 305 on the new software. You did 297 on the old software. So these vehicles are EPA range rated at 228 miles, I think. So we went like 70 more miles than the EPA range rating. It's kind of bizarre, and I think that hurts Porsche because people look at that and say, Teslas go 300 miles. This only goes 220, and it's just not true.
Well, there's certainly those, but then you look and there's like everyone's buying Taycans. Like I'm talking to dealers and like the only reason we have them is because they're 30 over sticker still. And I'm like, first of all, that's crazy. There's a lot of as a percentage of bad dealers go, Porsche has a pretty low percentage. They have really quality dealerships, but there's a few out there who are asses and they'll charge you out the butt. I went to a dealer recently to inquire about a car and they're like, it'll be 100 over. I'm like, are you out of your mind?
No, it won't. No.
I'm like, you know how many Twizzys I could
buy? Oh my, who would pay that? Oh, I guess maybe
some people just
people
have a lot of money. Some people
I mean, for the
don't
GT
care,
cars, people will pay for it and it's just a drop in the bucket. And they hold their value really well, and they probably will get most of that back on the secondary market. But I just want to comment really quickly. A lot of Lucid stuff, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so. We're going to probably redo a range test on it as well, just to confirm our results. We'll do more charge testing. We'll do possibly a road trip race between EQS, i7, Taycan, maybe another race to Vegas situation. With these cars, we might need to do like a race to LA. Might need to push it a little bit farther.
Yeah,
and
or someplace, Mexico.
Yeah,
go to the border.
Right. Well, we go to Mexico every day. It's on the way to the office, and
Mexico,
don't ask any questions. Yep. Great roads in Mexico.
Talking of Lucid, because the Lucid news I think broke after you put the show to bed, Dom, probably last night. But production and delivery numbers out today, and it's 1406 for the first quarter of the year, which is I think 15 cars a day. And that's fine. If I had a car company making 1,400 or delivering 1,400 vehicles a quarter, I'd be made up. But I don't think Lucid have those same aspirations. I think they want to be a slightly bigger car company than that. They're certainly valued at a bigger car company, and they've got hopefully the right people and the right technology and all the right things to move forward. I don't want to be negative about them because I think it's a great product they've made as their first attempt. But that's a very low number.
There's a lot of negative sentiment out there, Lucid, in the financial world. It seems. I think they need another. They need to get their other product, the Gravity SUV. They need to
I
get
don't
that
know
out
what
there.
I'm not sure. I've been really critical of companies doing that. I've always said,
Oh,
like,
really?
just hone. Just, they can't wait to get to the next thing. Like the Fisker Ocean isn't even out, and they're like, oh no, but wait
Well,
for the
yeah.
Pair. It's going to be amazing.
Sure.
And it's like, well, no, just ship this and do a really good job of it and support it really well with after sales, and then we'll all make our decision. And everyone's always like, hey, next thing, and I'm always a big fan of,
Sure.
well, let's get this right. It's not my name above the door. I'm not the one writing the check on payroll. So maybe you've got to do that in a world full of hype and buzz and, trying to maintain a stock price by getting people hyped about your company. But, and the point I think people made was 1406 is a very low number, but it's a lower number than Q4 in a company that should be, which was 1932, in a company that it should be on, triple figure growth quarter on quarter. It should be at this stage of their life, stellar.
Right.
And I feel a bit bad because I really like Lucid. I like what they
Right.
make, and it's impressive. But that's bad.
Well, I went to the factory recently, and I was just drove by on a road trip. I don't even know if I talked about it on the podcast,
Don't think
but
so.
yep,
I think you
yeah. So
mentioned you were
just
in
drove
that.
by, snooped around, got yelled at by security. You can't take pictures here, but I'm like, I'm driving on the road. I'm taking all the pictures. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, you can.
What? They were like not happy that we were there at all, which was really funny. But like not doing anything wrong, not trespassing or whatever, just like
Right.
driving down the street. But they had a lot of cars in the parking lot. Now, for me, it looked like there were a lot of cars ready to get shipped out and delivered. This was
Sure.
before I started to get comments on that post, saying, because I don't invest in automakers. I don't follow anything financial related. I don't care about production or deliveries. I'm a product person reviewing the car. But then a lot of people were like, Kyle, those are unsold. And I'm like, how do you know they're unsold? And no one could tell me for certain that those were unsold cars. If they were a batch going overseas, perhaps that was just waiting for the shipment to get, going, or what exactly was going on. But it seems like generally people are very against Lucid, and the Lucid stockholders are extremely on edge. If you say one thing about Lucid, they're worse than the Tesla people. They'll just hammer you out. I think it's so funny. I don't understand it because ultimately we're just reviewing product. But, I think these numbers may suggest that those could have been unsold. I hope that's not the case. Ultimately, let's hope they can get everything sorted. I hope that our testing over the next few weeks builds confidence in the car with our audience, because I think it's going to do really well in a lot of our tests. And, maybe I know we have a lot of viewers who still have orders who have not taken delivery yet. So I hope our testing can not necessarily convince them, but at least show them what the car is capable of. And if they choose after watching that not to buy it, well, then that's, unfortunate.
And Kyle, just like you, I have people that I know that have unfilled orders, that have ordered Lucid and hasn't had it delivered. So to me, that makes it hard it doesn't square with the fact that, those are just built cars that nobody wants.
Right.
Sitting in a parking lot, so nobody really knows what they are. Yeah. Right. Nobody knows what they are. I mean, for all you know, they could be vehicles that were built and didn't pass quality control, and they just pushed them out of the way for now and said, we'll get back to fixing them later. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I don't think that
cars.
Yeah, I don't think that Lucid is continuing to produce thousands of cars a month and they have nobody to buy them. And they're just going to keep making them, putting in the parking lot. I don't think that's the case, but
let's hope
see.
Not.
And as far as the mid-trail,
they need to get their Pure trim out, their entry-level model. I know a lot of people are waiting for the Pure because it's $180,000 for a Grand Touring Performance. It's $150,000 for a Grand Touring. It's $130 something for a Touring. And guess what? They all look the same. You can't tell any difference between them. And so I think it's a tough sell. I mean, the secondary market, Matt Farah was just talking about it on his podcast, the Smoking Tire podcast. He was talking about how my dad got his car at 105,000 with 890 miles on it. So there's something going on. I just think they need a confidence booster. And no question, there's some aspects of the car that are class leading that no one can match. And I think a lot of our testing will highlight that. And I think to a lot of people that matters. I think what Lucid should do though is get more review units out there, get more buzz going, get influencers in the car. You don't hear about Lucid unless you're in either the financial space or the EV space. I think it would be so easy for them to get the name out, get the excitement pumping. They got the cars. There's plenty of content creators out there. They're not in press fleets yet. Like, let's get the cars out and working. People are going to be blown away. Every automotive journalist, by the way, if I was Lucid, I'm just going to go on a quick half a second rant here. Every automotive journalist for some reason hates Tesla. I can't figure out why, but they do. Like, just everything against Tesla and everything against Elon. Give them a Lucid and it's the next best thing on the planet, even without them testing the car. So just put it in press fleets and let journalists write great articles about it. It's only going to help. No one's going to write a bad article about a Lucid because they all love Tesla. I'm generalizing, but I think that's a fair statement.
Well, and you know why all the journalists hate Tesla. It's because they won't answer your questions. They're so used to, if you send an email to PR or marketing and say, look, how does this work? Or how do I do this? Or how do I do this? You get an answer. With Tesla, you can't get an answer on anything. I mean, I remember how frustrated I was when I first got my Model 3. I had legitimate questions about the car that I didn't understand. And then I had my followers asking me questions about it that I couldn't answer. So I sent a bunch of emails like to them back when they had marketing and said, look, I'm a journalist. I'm also an owner. I love my car. I love it, but I have some questions about it, and never got a simple response. I understand how that pisses people off, you know, and
I love it.
So
I think it's
I had
great.
to go to, yeah, you know, I mean, it's not great when an owner is asking a question and has to go to social media to ask the community to give me an answer. That's not great, Kyle. I mean, there's got to be a happy medium in there.
I think
there has to be a happy medium in there. You think it's reasonable not to answer any questions?
Totally. I mean, you email me, we're probably not going to get a response. Not out of negativity. We're just working on our thing. Tesla's
you're
just
not
working on
selling it. You're not trying to sell anything. You're not. It's not your product.
But guess what, Tom? They didn't respond to anyone, and they're smoking everyone.
I know. I'm not denigrating the product at all. It's a great product. Their vehicles are great. I own 2 of them. I think they're great. I just, at the bare minimum, you should be able to get a response if you send an email, if you're asking a question. Like I said, not even just as a pure journalist, but as an owner. So I just spent $55,000 on your car. I have a question. You know, crickets. That's not cool, in my opinion.
I don't know. I guess we'll agree to disagree there. I subscribe to Tesla's approach when it comes to dealing with the media. I think just wall, and if you hate us, that's cool. We're still smoking everyone.
I mean, they can afford to do it now, but you know, yeah. I think that only goes so far, though, depending on how things develop and mature as a market. But we need to talk about this. It sure looks like that for now. But let's talk about, you have a video coming out today where you charged, I think, what was that video you did? The Tesla Model, was it Model Y 0 to 100?
Nope, it was a range test.
70-mile-an-hour range test.
Yep,
and
that's coming out today.
In the long range?
Long range, 20-inch wheels, so it's the Hertz special. They don't, for some reason, rent out Aero wheel Model Ys. But yeah, so it did great. 286 miles on a single charge, which is really impressive. Ran it from full till where it pretty much stopped moving. We had service mode pulled up. We were looking at battery voltages. We were on bottom voltage. It was pretty cool and did really well. So don't watch the video because I already told you how far it'll go. But if you're bored enough, put it on in the background and let it play. But
or watch this other video so Martin's pulled up this other video that you have that I was going to mention as well. So it's kind of interesting too, because we did range tests. That's just wanted to point out Tesla rates the Tesla Model Y long range at 330 miles. You get 280 miles at 70 miles an hour. Definitely not a Porsche, but like an under promise, over deliver kind of situation. But you did this battery health test.
It's not the manufacturers rating the cars; it's the EPA that develops these wonky test cycles. Yeah, no, it is. I mean, the EPA has the test loops that you have to run the cars in. So they set the standard. Right. Automakers can self-certify in whichever test they choose.
They can choose a lower number if they want to, though.
Of course, but why would you? I mean, that car can go over its range easily if you just drive it around town.
Okay.
And any Tesla can just drive it slow. But they're not. That's been the Tesla thing. I'm not saying it's right. It's actually on the government side to say, hey, we need to really work on how we're rating the range here, and to make it all apples to apples. Because you can't have two different or three different cycles and then compare all the numbers, because they mean nothing at that point. And that's where we are, unfortunately.
So really quickly, we got to hit some news. Actually, we don't have that much time. But you did a battery health test on this, and that was very interesting. It's a great video. People should watch this. It's not that simple. It's not that quick. So maybe just briefly tell us what's involved in a battery health test.
Okay,
so we can watch a video to tell you how to do it.
Yep, two different testing procedures involved with looking at the health of your battery pack. The first is draining the car from 100% to 0 and looking how many kilowatt hours you can pull out of it. That's the traditional way. I also did that on this car. So we compared that to what a new value would be. It's better if you have the car on day one and you do that, and then you do it every year or two after to track your degradation, because then it's the same car. But that gives us good estimate roughly. And then there's also a built-in service mode in the cars that will automatically drain the battery pack to 0 and charge it to full and look at the battery health. I'm not exactly sure if the battery health is directly related to degradation, or if it has to do with resistance plus degradation or something else. But roughly the health test came back at 93% battery health, which is pretty good for almost 13,000 miles and 10 months of rental abuse. I picked up the car full charged. It seemed like it was only ever full charged or drained. I don't know. The car was not taken care of. It had scratches and dings and dents on every panel. No one cared for this thing.
The worst paint ever. Swirls all over.
It was so
car
bad.
wash city.
The worst I've ever seen. And then when I did the battery degradation test, pulling kilowatt hours out, it showed about a 4 to 5% degradation, relative to that 7% number in the battery health test. So somewhere around there, I would say it's definitely seems a bit higher than a typical use vehicle, maybe by 1% or 2. But again, most degradation happens in the first year and then trails off, and so hard to say. To be fair, though, this car has not lived an easy life, and it's holding up still really well. So it's not like rental abuse is going to kill him.
Sweet. All right.
But that's good. That's good to know, isn't it? Because a lot of ex-rental cars will end up normally at auctions. True. And that's a great place to pick up a cheap car. And one of those things that in the EV world we want to know about is battery health. There's a company called Recurrent do battery health tests. I think they're used by one of the big US car organizations. But it's going to be an increasingly interesting topic when you're buying a secondhand car and you don't know where it's come from. Is there a battery report? Is there a standardized report we need to get to as an industry? Is there a number that I need to be looking at, especially when you're buying a used vehicle? That's the key thing. So the more we can learn about this and help educate people, I think the better.
Right. Yeah, and we're starting to see those rental cars come up for sale. My colleague Max has been shopping for a Polestar 2 and ended up buying one yesterday. He got a really cool performance pack, dual motor, one owner car with like 6,000 miles. CPO is great. But he was actually considering an ex-Polestar rental car at a pretty reasonable price, almost $7,000 or $8,000 less than the one that he went for. And we both agreed that the battery, no matter what it had been through, which we are imagining worst case scenario, probably still would have been fine.
Right.
I bought an ex-rental Kona, the car that we had a week in the most bizarre car situation possible. But viewers of 2 weeks ago know why I wanted to take my dad's car when he had to stop driving. And so we knew he wanted a Kona, and I bought one. And then a week later, my dad had to give up his driving license. And so we had that first car a week. And then I took my dad's because it means a lot to me, and I'll keep that a bit. I'll certainly keep the number plate because he has a personalized rego on it. But that was an ex-rental. That was 8 months old ex-rental, and I'm like, what are you doing? It had about 4,000 miles on it. Who knows why companies clear out stock, and it hadn't been abused. I put my OBD dongle in. It was not 100% battery and on car scanner, and so it hadn't been abused. It was absolutely in mint condition, which is why we were happy to buy it. But so cars come on the market for all sorts of reasons, and you don't know what's under the skin. I think it's fair to say the average buyer of an EV has not got car scanner on their on their phone. They're not going to be plugging things in at the dealership to be, oh, let me have a quick check on battery state of health. I would, and maybe you would, but the average person perhaps wouldn't.
Probably not. Pete Bermy asked real quick, Kyle, did the Rental Y have FSD?
No, of course not. No, it was just basic autopilot, but nothing was limited.
Right.
It had no speed limit on it. Let you do, full charge, full drain. Autopilot worked great. The only limitation that it had was it wouldn't let you open the glove box, which I think all Hertz don't let you open the glove box. So what's in the glove box? I don't know.
But what's in the glove box?
Yeah, they won't let, because all the other storage compartments you can use, but not the glove box.
I wonder if in a rental future, whether there'll be some sort of extra layer of software on top of EV software. That's interesting to think about. Totally. If you buy an Android phone, well, I mean, Kyle and I wouldn't buy an Android phone, but
never.
Tom and Dom, hey, Mr. Green Text. If you buy an Android, if you get a Samsung, I've had a couple over the years, HTC or whatever, they've got their own layer of Android on top. And I wonder if at some point with rentals becoming more popular, or these subscription companies, whether they'll be able to put something on kind of on top of the OEM software that, like Kyle says, lets you charge to 80, lets you access like emergency range or something. It's kind of, I wonder if they're able to do that. I don't know.
I don't know. But we need to talk about some news real quick because we're almost out of time. Anyway, we need to say something about it because this is kind of big, actually. So the big product news of this week has to be the leak photo of what is purported to be the refreshed Tesla Model 3. So let's pull up a picture here. I think you've got one there, Martin.
Have you got that? I can get this one. There you go. That one?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's it. I've got one that's kind of cropped. I don't know if it might take me a minute to bring it up or to find it, but
okay, let me bring it up.
Yeah. But as you can see, the car had a tarp over it that's been pulled off the front, and then we can see that it has a different fascia that the Model 3 that we know has. So this one looks a bit like a cross between a Model 3 and a Tesla Roadster concept, or the prototype. So also interesting to note that it looks like it has bug splatters all over the front of it, which is a little odd since we've seen some Model 3, we call this the Highland. I guess that's the internal code name for the refresh, running around with the front end and the rear end covered up to hide what the changes are. So, but I think it's pretty safe to assume that these cars didn't get bug splatters, so I'm not sure how this one did, and they're all over the windshield too. So this photo was posted on the Tesla Motors subreddit by an account that's been around for 12 years, and it seems to be held by somebody who they seem to be a Tesla owner. They occasionally post to that subreddit. Right. So some people are saying they think they see an instrument cluster like the Model S has. It's kind of hard to tell. It might also have a yoke. And it looks like the screen may be tilted a little. I've seen another picture online of it looks like a not a blueprint, but it's some sort of rough drawing from a image from China, maybe, where it has like the dash with a screen kind of set into it, like the Tesla Model S does now. But this is in the horizontal configuration. Yeah, I don't know. What do y'all think about this? Is this real, Kyle? Is this real?
I mean, it looks certainly like something they've been testing. I think we've seen proof that it's not a Photoshop. I think it's a very reasonable design evolution for Model 3. Definitely those bugs could, many automakers go to private testing facilities or even their own internal testing facilities to do aero testing or any type of vehicle test needed before market launch. So no surprise that this has been out driving around, probably just not on public roads. Probably was just shipped in enclosed transport. But I think it seems very reasonable. I think it almost looks as if the dashboard cover is draped over a steering wheel rather than a binnacle of sorts. But man, I think this looks great. I think the wheels look awesome. I think it's a very reasonable evolution for the car. And, it's almost unlike Tesla to refresh a vehicle this much. Now, granted, if you were to remove the headlights, the rest of the car looks pretty much the same. But that front end design is a real departure from current Model 3, which almost has big frog eyes, if you will. This is more roadster-ish headlights, more hardcore, and definitely fits with the company vibe of going with semi and roadster styling. You can tell this is a US spec car because it has the amber side markers built into the headlights itself. So that's pretty cool. No fog light housing there. Obviously no parking sensors because it's all vision only. I mean, it seems very plausible that this is the next Model 3, or at least was intended to be, if they don't change it. But everything those bugs look fresh. I don't know when the photo was taken. This seems like it could be it.
Someone's asking, what are those big blocks in the wheels?
So with Tesla's new wheels, they ended up they want to have the look of a large wheel because big wheels look cool, but they want the aero profile of a smaller wheel. So these are so we've seen them on Model X, we've seen them a little bit on the Model 3 sport wheels, but these are maybe the next generation design. They basically take the aero profile and keep it flat on the outer edge of the wheel where it matters the most, because that's where you have most air resistance, of course. And just pulls the wheel in a little bit so you get just slightly better efficiency.
Right on. Martin, did you have anything you want to say about this in particular, or Tom?
No, I like it. I agree with pretty much everything Kyle said. I think the front looks a lot better, and it's kind of what I would expect, as Kyle said, in the normal evolution of the 3. I think it's a lot cleaner. It doesn't have that duckling look on the front. I heard a lot of people describe the front of the Model E, the Model 3 as like a fish or a duck bill. So it doesn't have that look, and I think it looks good. I think it's impossible to tell what's going on inside. I think it's something draped over the wheel, like Kyle said. That was my initial thought, rather than being able to judge what it is. And with that, the Mach-E's here.
Okay. So you get the mobile. Is it right there in your garage? That's true. He's in his garage, so maybe he just pulls
Look at that.
I thought I heard the reverse chime of a Mach-E.
Oh,
hey!
Wow. You know what? You're not going to miss it. Look at that color.
Oh, it's a non-performance. Bummer.
I was expecting a performance.
Yeah. Performance GT.
Yeah,
GT
that's not even a GT.
They just emailed me the
Send it back.
Monroney yesterday, and I didn't even look at it. That's what I was expecting, but it's not. So yeah, well, that's what I'll be driving this week, and we should be able to get some content coming out of that. At the very least, I want to do the BlueCruise 1.2 and see how it is. I was hoping I could even maybe set up a side-by-side with my Lightning, but it's different vehicles, so I don't know how comparable that is. But we'll be playing around with that this week for sure.
Side-by-side charging.
Let me just sign the papers, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. Send it back, Tom. That's not what you wanted. You want the top spec, man. GT performance. All right. So while he's doing that, late last week, Tesla lowered its prices, but they also introduced a new version of the Tesla Model Y. We know it's been coming for a while. This variant is simply known as the Model Y on the Tesla website, as opposed to the Model Y long range or performance versions. So it's a dual motor all-wheel drive like the others, but it starts $3,000 cheaper than the Model Y long range, which is now rated at 330 miles. This new one offers a range of 279 miles, which is still pretty decent. And it's only 0.2 of a second slower to 60, flat 5-second time, which is plenty fast. So apparently this one has the new 4680 cells in its pack. We don't know how many kilowatt hours it is. Kyle, have you made plans to test one of these yet? And what are the biggest questions about it that you'd like to answer?
Well, they're actually already out in the public, and they have been for a year now. They've just been an off-menu inventory only option, the Austin-built 4680s.
And employees.
So all this is saying, yep, employees. We've actually had them here in Colorado. I don't know anyone who owns one, but I believe Eric and his mom from the Derek YouTube channel got one. So I might reach out and see if I can swap her the Plaid for a day or something. I don't know. I got to find one to test because I'm sure it won't be too hard now that they're on market. But there are some tax implications in certain states why you want the pre-delivery price to be under $50,000, which could really help lower it. So it's priced well. I think unless you're in one of those states where you have a $50,000 cap, probably worth just going for the bigger, longer range version. Charges a little bit better, a little bit more range, a couple $1,000s. I think that's the way to go. I wish this was actually slightly cheaper. I wish it was like $47,900. It's still an incredible value, but it's pretty close to long range. And that's always been the case, even on the inventory cars. They've been pretty reasonable. But, I actually surprisingly, I've heard quite a few reliability issues with the 4680, and it might just be one very loud person or a few very loud people who are upset, but I have heard of a couple that needed pack replacements. And I was also just thinking, how do you replace the structural pack? So do they just replace the car, or do they bolt the seats off of it and put new seats on? Like, I don't know how that works.
Right.
So,
I think it's removable.
Lots of questions. Yeah. Well, Monroe has shown anything's removable with enough heavy metal.
But then you got to put it back together again at the end of the day. And I mean,
replaceable is the word I wanted to use.
Yeah.
Replaceable.
I don't know. I don't know how they're going to handle that.
There's no serviceable parts inside it. When you see the amount of pink foam that they had to air blast away, whatever it was, that Corey told us, there's no serviceable parts in there. So that's a pack replacement, and then it'll get ground up and it'll go to recycling. It'll all get sent in the wood chipper, and it'll be sent to the smelter, and it'll be recycled. So I'm with Kyle on this. If you don't have to be under 50K, there's no reason not to buy the long range for 3,000 at that purchase price. At that, if you are in the market for a $50,000 car, then that price difference is worth stretching, just to get the extra range, flicking between the two. And also I know I've said this already, but I'm really confused about these 4680 cells, because there was the fanfare, the price reduction, the increased performance and efficiency, and et cetera, and it's been introduced as the base spec, which is a lot worse than a car that is only slightly more expensive, using 2170s. Look, it's a 50-mile difference, and it's like, well, you want Tesla's latest, greatest batteries? You can save 3,000, but get a much worse car. I don't know. I just thought that it's an interesting thing to put it on the menu as the worst option, because the 46.
I agree. I thought this was like unlocking the Plaid Plus performance, and
here we go.
But then when I really, if you really think about it, unless you like dunk and submerge all the cells, from a cooling perspective, don't you think it's better to have smaller cells, because you can get more touch points for cooling? You don't have so much internal hotspot inside of that cell.
That would require a lot of math, I think.
Yeah, we need to do some math.
Really figure it out.
And actually, on this topic, if there's any viewers who are battery chemistry experts, which I am not, but I need to learn more, we really want to do a series on Model 3 LFP on battery care for long term. I know they have extremely long cycle life, so it like almost doesn't matter, but we want to know what is the best way, if there is a best way. So if you know from a chemistry perspective, reach out. But I think the reason they priced it this way, Martin, what do you think, is they still are production constrained out of Austin a little bit, but they're now just maybe getting a little bit more. So they're like, rather than just doing inventory, we'll throw it on the menu, and we're going to price it so not everyone will go for it.
Yeah, that's probably it. I think I agree. It'll be the hardcore fans that have got one already and are going to trade in what they've got because they want the latest, greatest thing. And there's still this thing that floats around online on forums that I see all the time, which is that they are pack. People have weighed them and they're like, it doesn't make sense. The car's too heavy. And that it's some sort of pack lock. And that one day Tesla is going to go, ta-da! And you pay another $5,000 and another 100 miles just arrives. I don't know. Yeah. I'm sort of up there with the Loch Ness Monster and the Yeti on those conspiracy or those fantasies. Right. But I don't really buy into those, but I think those rumors float around online because people are scratching their heads because this isn't what was. I mean, I don't care, but I'm not a Tesla investor.
We expected more from these things for sure. Well, from the 4670, yeah.
Let me just say, we were told to expect more, and if anybody at the time, any Tesla car launch. Anytime Elon launched battery swapping and said, the charging will be free forever on every car, or when he launches any car, or the Cybertruck, or the Roadster, or this, if anybody dares say to a Tesla fan, well, that's nice, but wait till they ship it, and we're, oh my goodness me, if I had just the amount of people berate me that I'm an idiot, that I don't listen to enough Tesla financial podcasts, that I need to, be listening to this. There's a one channel, he's Down Under or something, like, you need to watch this and fully understand how they're going to be $1 trillion company next week. And like, this is why this is why I feel this way, is because I'm sure, nobody on this podcast has been disrespectful. Everyone watching and listening has been more than charming. But there are people out there that when Tesla do battery day and you don't immediately jump on the bandwagon, you're berated for it just for saying, "Oh, that's really cool. That's cool. Like, let's just see where they go." And then all these years later, they launch a product that isn't that great and it's just okay. And then no one goes back and goes, "Hang on a minute, we were told this was going to be amazing." Like, no one cares because they've moved on to the next thing or the next Tesla event or the next trip to Mars or whatever, and no one ever goes back and goes, "Hang on a minute, this is not what we didn't drive across America 5 years ago like you promised." But hey, Elon's Teflon, nothing sticks.
I think what's reasonable is Martin, you and Tom and all of us, I'll just be really quick. We all base our impressions of Tesla typically on products that are around today. We don't really, I'm not thinking Cybertruck. I'm not thinking semis. Sounds like semis really not working out that well.
Semis, but semis got 18 just delivered, but this week.
How many?
18.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's something. It's something.
I mean, but they're all breaking down from software issue.
We don't know. We don't know if they're breaking down.
No, they confirmed it was a software issue.
Right. Yeah, one truck.
No, it wasn't one truck.
Okay. Was it?
No, there was multiple. It was both of them.
Several, yeah. It was several.
Yeah, a few of them.
Okay.
Either way, all I'm saying is we're basing our impressions off of Tesla today, but I don't think any of us are like, definitely we're not like, "Oh, but the Roadster is going to change the game." They kind of have just quietly stopped talking about the Roadster, and the fans haven't brought it up either. Even the ones that have been promised like 7 free Roadsters. If I was promised 7 free Roadsters, I'd be like, "Where the hell is my car? Like,
where's my free car?"
Yeah,
like I pumped your company with my referral code non-stop, and I want my 2 Roadsters. They're never getting.
No, they won't say it.
Some of these people are my favorite people in the world, like Björn Newland, Ryan from Ride the Lightning. Like, I just adore these people for their passion. But I'd be, and they're such nice people as well, that they're never going to be like, "Where's my free car that you promised me?" They're never getting it.
So Kyle, to answer your question from earlier, I think Dr. Veronica Wright is someone to talk to about batteries. I think Lacey mentioned her as well. Electrified Veronica, she might go under. Okay. Really quickly before we had to close real second, but I need to at least mention the Zeekr X, which did because it's it debuted in early February. It now officially is Europe bound. Some quick specs: 66 kilowatt hour battery, 428 horsepower. Starts in China at 189,800 RMB, which is $27,600 US dollars equivalent. 27,600 US equivalent for this thing. It's about Kia Niro size. This seems like a crazy good value, Martin, at the equivalent of 27.6. Do you think that will translate to euros and British pounds, or do you expect it to be as good a deal when it reaches your shores?
Well, it can do it, and it can't, and it can do because we've seen the MGs, cheap MG, owned by SAIC, sell the MG4, which is you'd call it a compact, and is immense value for money. We had a lot of hype around another car arriving called the Aura Cat or the Aura Funky Cat, called different things in China, and that is a lot of money for. It's a good car, but it's just priced really, really expensively. And if I'm going to spend a lot of money on a small car, I'm going to go get a Mini Cooper or a Honda E. And so the Chinese have got form. Oh, we still own the MG ZS EV. I mean, I got to sell that car, but we still own the MG. And that's a great family car. They've got form in doing this, and there's times that the Chinese haven't. So it's hard to say definitively and paint with broad brushstrokes, but if they do it, then I do think that that they're onto a winner, because the BYD Seal is another one that I've been. It's going with the Atto 4 when it's launched in Australia and Europe and the UK, and that's 2/3 of the price of a Tesla Model 3. And look at the seats in there. They look like Mercedes-Benz EQS. It's like these cars have the potential, if the price is right, to really get people's attention. The MG4 actually also drives really well. It's rear wheel drive. It's got a great chassis. It's brilliant. That's a fantastic car. And that's £30,000.
Wow. That sounds okay.
So
that pretty much sums it up. But Tom, did you have something? I cut you off earlier.
Oh, no, that's fine. All I wanted to say is I wanted to kind of agree with Martin and Kyle and talk a little bit about with Tesla with their announcements. Like, we all understand, we follow the industry. We know when to call bullshit, but the problem is that public doesn't. They see a Elon on the stage saying this next generation of battery is going to be revolutionary. It's going to do this. It's going to do this. It's going to do this. All these things. We're way ahead of the world. The structural pack, these cells are, nobody's even thinking about doing what we're doing here. And then most people just take it as fact. But then it comes out and, we do tear down. Sandy did a tear down, was kind of like, this isn't what we were promised, and we're talking about it here. But the perception is that these new 4680 cells are just the be all end all. And that's why people want them. And the public, I come up against this all the time when people talk about, why would I get anything but Tesla? Their new batteries are better than anything else on the market. And that's a problem with what we have here now is people just assume what they hear is going to be fact. And it doesn't happen, particularly with Tesla. When we get these announcements, the product we end up getting with isn't necessarily what was promised up on stage earlier on. And that's a problem. That's fake news, that and people accept it as fact. And we know this. So to us, we're like, oh yeah, well, that's just Tesla, but there's damage that gets done when they promise X, Y, and Z and then don't deliver because people have moved on to the next thing. They've taken it as fact. Why is Tesla selling so many cars? Well, they just have the best battery tech. They have batteries that are so far beyond what everybody else has that's why you have to get a Tesla. So I don't know how we undo that, but that's that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. And they have the testing of the supercharger network. They have a lot of, Tesla has a lot of good things going for it.
Oh yeah,
some
absolutely. I'm not killing them here. They have great cars. They have by far the best charging. They have best charging equipment. I've owned 2 Teslas. I would buy another one in a heartbeat. But there is a problem with this when we say, by the end of the year, the car is going to drive across the country, and then it doesn't. And then by the end of next year, and buy the full pay, give me $15,000 because it's an appreciating asset. In 2 years, it's going to be worth $30,000. And then we have these new batteries coming out, and they're going to have these the interior chemistry is going to be made different. It's going to do this, it's going to do this, and then it doesn't. Our sports car that's coming out in 2 years is going to have a rocket booster. It's great to be optimistic.
Okay?
No, it is. It's great to be optimistic, but the problem is we all know to take everything he says in a grain of salt. The general public doesn't, and I think that's disingenuous.
I used to be more accepting of. I would more be more accepting of the things that Elon would say and things. But yeah, over the last 5 years, become a bit more skeptical. It's like, okay, we'll wait till we see what actually happens in reality,
rather than what's available to the end user to buy today.
Yes,
and then you're good.
Yes.
Yeah, and then just live in that world. And then you don't have to deal with the hype.
Right.
There you go. Well, that's what we're promised on screen right now. Extreme performance and range. No, it's 50 miles less than a car costing $3,000 more. It's worse range and worse and slower.
And slightly slower.
So there's nothing extreme about the Model Y with 4680 cells. And I don't care because it's a brilliant car. And actually, the best thing on the market right now is a Model S Plaid with a round steering wheel. It's the best thing you can buy. It's brilliant.
Well,
and yet... you know what? Nothing
broke this week.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I made a video about it.
Oh,
no,
you didn't.
A wheel on the back right side of the car. Actually, it seemed like the car went back to Tesla for repairs at the Tesla factory service center. We didn't know what happened to it, but like the brake caliper broke off its mount on track, and we were like, "That's weird." Like that's not a Tesla. I'm not saying this is from a stock car. Like the car's been through a lot. It has modified components, and so we're like, well, "What the heck's going on here?" And so then we jammed the brake caliper back on, and I was just going to limp the car back home, and then we noticed the wheels starting to wobble. So it went up on the lift yesterday, and it looks like the whole knuckle, wheel bearing, whole thing just needs a whole new back right rear assembly. And we're thinking it's possible it was a weak spot after the accident, which happened on the other side of the car when it was smashed into the curbs. And I don't know, but definitely like a work in progress. Got to make a video. But of course, if I make a video, everyone's like, well, you're going to blame Tesla. Well, technically, Yeah, and a bit because it was a factory component under not, stress that the car shouldn't be able to handle. It's higher stress than factory. And yeah, either way, we'll fix it. We'll get the new parts on it, and it's fine. It's not a big deal, but it does seem a bit like it wasn't repaired properly. But
we
I
talked
do love
about
my
it at the
Model
time.
S parts.
Yeah, because when the car spun around and hit the curb side on, there's that force that kind of
transmits through. But
yeah, we were worried at the time about what other damage might have been, apart from just what snapped. There
Right.
was quite a lot of latitude force across the car. So, oh man,
Right, yeah. So it was a factory part that broke, but the car's been through weird circumstances. And of
Yeah.
course, we had actually not the rear tires are factory size. So it's not like it's under any higher stress in the rear. We're running 295s in the rear, which is the factory size. But we did have upgraded brakes, but I don't think that was the problem there. It really, I think it was probably just the wheels actually fine. The wheels perfect. Yeah, don't know. We can't blame Tesla because of what that car's been through. We're just going to get new parts on it, move on, and that'll be that. But it's probably going to be like $6,000 worth of stuff, something like that.
Is it warranted?
Actually, probably not, because there's aftermarket components.
God, I was a little bit sick in my mouth just then. Oh my goodness me.
I mean, I'm going to ask, right? Because ultimately, if you take a normal car around a corner quickly, then that shouldn't happen. But the car, it happened on track, and typically things aren't warranted on track. And while it was just a warm-up 3 laps and we weren't even going hard, technically it was a closed course incident. And because we're YouTubers, everything's filmed. I'm not going to lie to them and say it happened on the street. So I'll probably have to write the check, would be my guess. Even though it might be, it should have been a warranty claim. I'm not denying that, or at least maybe an insurance claim from them not fixing it properly from when we went through insurance to fix the car. But I think either way, I think just the weird circumstances, I'm going to have to, and it might be more than that. That's just a conservative guess. I don't know.
Well, Lacey said it right. That car has bad juju, Kyle.
I know, but I think it's going to create a good story. I was thinking maybe we should sell it, but now I'm like, well, what else could happen? So let's see.
I mean, if it gets views, I mean, people want to see what, follow the tale of this. Yeah.
Plus, I really enjoy it. That car is just a monster. Round wheel, 1,000 horsepower. You're roasting tires coming out of every corner. Like that really is something special. It's pretty crazy.
It is something like that. Just what the acceleration it can do is mind bending. But I think that brings us to the end of our show.
Cool.
If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them on the Inside EV's forum podcast thread or on our YouTube or Twitch comment sections. If you like the show, please give us a thumbs up. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget you can find and follow our panelists on Twitter. You follow Tom at Tomolog, that's with 2 M's. Martin Lee is at EV News Daily. Kyle Connor is at It's Kyle Connor. And I'm at Dominic on post.news. Click subscribe and tap that bell icon for notifications. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we'll see you all again next week. Ciao.